One of the most celebrated screenwriters of all time is Charlie Kaufman. Out of all his peers, he stood out quite easily. While many writers explore the human condition through grounded realism, Kaufman veers in the opposite direction. His films often incorporate surreal and abstract elements that instantly disrupt the audience's perception of reality. But these unique touches don't just serve as decoration to the story or just to shock the audience. They define the emotional and psychological landscape of the films, turning each of them into a grand introspective journey through memory, regret, identity, and time. This incredible style is what earned him his magnificent stature, winning him many awards and many recognition. I most definitely agree with the reasoning before. I wrote them myself. But one thing is missing, which made him special for me. And that is his masterful way of comforting the audience of his films. Let's analyze his writing style. In his films, like I said before, they are visually surreal, combining many fantastical elements and sometimes consist of many weird events and dreamlike sequences that cannot be explained easily or logically. For example, in The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the film contains many surreal elements like the many dream sequences in Jim Carrey's character's mind. Things appear and disappear within the memory through the memory erasing machine. Or in the film Anomalisa, where everybody has the same face and that face can be attached and detached. And also in Being John Malkovich, where we can physically go into John Malkovich's mind and control it. While this style may be disorienting and confusing, for me, this is one of the ways Charlie Kaufman makes his films comforting. The visual style before works as a validation to the audience as it helps to represent our anxieties and fears in life. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the film uses the visuals as a representation of how hard maintaining a relationship is, how hard being in love is, and how hard it is to find love. The struggle of maintaining a relationship and finding someone who knows you and will always be there for you is similar to the difficulties of Jim Carrey maintaining Kate Winslet in his mind. Another example of his successful identification of our fear and repressed emotions is in his newest film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. The two different storylines we see in the film are a tool for the audience to help see the hatred we see in ourselves. In the main storyline of boyfriend Jake and the girl, this reality is filled with confusing elements and dreamlike sequences because all of this is happening inside of the old man Jake's mind. The road trip they're on is all made up by him. He imagines this trip to find any reason why he should stay alive, seeing if there's any redeeming quality within him that can legitimize his existence. That is why his imagination of journey and finding any merit to his life is mixed with failed dreams, mashups of old memories, and symbolisms of self-hate. The unique visuals and dreamlike surreal elements of the film help to validate our experience as human, as it talks about fears, pain, and struggles of being you, or trying to cope with who you are as a person. Seeing these deeply repressed emotions on the big screen makes us feel seen and helps us to process the weight of guilt and hatred together. Besides his visual style, another way he comforts the viewer is by the ending of his films. I know that's a weird thing to say. If you've watched his films, you know that his films don't tend to end on a great note. Synecdoche, New York concludes with the protagonist fading into the background of his own collapsing world, quietly accepting death in a moment which feels disturbingly ordinary. Anomalisa ends with our main character sitting alone in a sadness as he realizes he won't find uniqueness and exciting things in his life anymore. And in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the film ends with our main character, Old Man Jake, accepting that he tried his best living his pathetic life and end his life. So what's comforting about these endings? I understand how disturbing some of the endings are, but what I mean by the ending, it's not necessarily the ending of the film, but how the film reaches its endings. We can't forget that the surreal elements that I mentioned previously not only act as a validation, but it also acts as the challenges and the obstacles that our main character has to confront, beat, and win against for their character arc. Knowing this, What I find comforting about these endings are, despite the severity and monstrousness of those challenges, that it seems highly unlikely for our main character to prevail. When it seems too hard to win and there's no hope for our protagonist to find something out of it, Charlie Kaufman's films always end with a happy ending. For example, in Adaptation, besides the craziness of the main character's adaptation work, the highly unlikely possibility of him actually finishing his project, against all odds, in the end he finished. And in Synecdoche, New York, for example, our main character, even after facing such tumultuous, such grand obstacle of trying to finish his experimental live theater, he did fail in the end, and everybody dies. But personally, our main character finally accepts his fate that he will die, and he's not afraid about it anymore. Same as in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. While in the end, he did ultimately die, right before that scene, in a Nobel Prize scene, that scene is not just a bizarre, out of nowhere scene that doesn't connect to anything. The scene represents every character inside old janitor Jake's mind that has played a part in trying to find a way to stay alive. Finally, being brave, open, and forgiving of his own self. And that is represented by the young Jake's character, who, in old makeup, accepts the Nobel Prize, which is a symbol of him accepting everything. A symbol of endurance, of trying your best even if you don't succeed. You finally accept that you tried your best in this world, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's what I love about Charlie Kaufman. Besides all the madness in this world that we are struggling against, in some form of way, he wants us to know that we always find something that helps us to either, at the very least, accept that struggle and keep moving on with life. From his way of telling his story, we can see how special cinema is to him and how capable it is to reach human minds and helps us to live life.